The galaxy was burning in a way no one had expected, the flames of war sweeping across the stars as the Zorathian Empire pressed its relentless assault on every corner of the known universe. Its warships were an unstoppable force, their weapons capable of turning entire planets into nothing more than dust. The coalition of alien races who had once stood united against this aggression were now fractured and on the verge of collapse. The Zorathians had already obliterated entire fleets with ruthless efficiency. Their soldiers were unmatched, their technology far superior, and their strategies flawless. No one had ever been able to challenge their dominance. The galaxy was on its knees, and the end seemed inevitable. In the midst of this dark moment, a signal was sent out, one last desperate cry from the remaining free worlds. An alliance of races that had survived the initial onslaught was reaching out to any species that might have the courage to stand against the Zorathian Empire. They knew their chances were slim, but they had nothing left to lose. The message traveled through space, seeking any response from a distant civilization, perhaps one that had not yet tasted the bitterness of the war. It was a call that humanity would receive. At first, no one believed it was real. How could it be possible that a relatively young species with no experience in galactic warfare was being asked to join a battle already lost by so many others? But then it became clear the truth was undeniable. The plea for help was real, and humanity was faced with a choice: to turn away or to step into a war that had already claimed millions of lives, to risk everything to join a conflict whose outcome seemed sealed. Humanity had been at peace for so long, their only wars were distant echoes of history. But the world had changed in the blink of an eye. The old alliances of Earth's nations had evolved into a new order, one that was united under a single banner, a banner that would soon fly across the stars in the name of a cause far greater than anything humanity had ever known. The people of Earth were not fighters, not conquerors. They had no vast fleets of warships or planet-killing weapons. But they did have something different, something the Zorathians did not understand: the will to survive, the determination to never give up. And so humanity's leaders made a choice. They would answer the call and join the galactic struggle. No matter the odds, no matter the cost, they would send their fleet into the unknown and place their faith in the strength of their people. The human fleet wasn't large compared to the alien forces already in the war, but what it lacked in size it made up for in ingenuity and adaptability. Humanity's ships were designed for exploration, not war, but they could be repurposed quickly. Their crews were untested but eager to prove themselves. Their commanders were veterans of terrestrial conflicts, but had no experience in the stars. Yet there was something about the humans, something that set them apart, something that gave them the courage to face the unknown and stand tall against the storm that was coming. As the fleet prepared to depart for the front lines, humanity had one singular goal: to show the galaxy that they were more than just a species struggling to find their place among the stars. They were a species that refused to let fear decide their fate. No matter what the galaxy had become, they would stand with their new allies and fight for survival against the unstoppable tide of the Zorathian Empire. Humanity's fleet arrived in the midst of chaos, its arrival barely noticed in the turmoil of battle. The skies above the alien coalition's remaining strongholds were filled with flashing lights, the debris of destroyed ships, and the hum of weapons fire. The Zorathian warships loomed like shadows, their massive forms unshaken by the devastation they wrought. They were an impenetrable wall, a symbol of everything the coalition had failed to stop, and the humans, with their untested ships, had no idea how they would fare against such a force. Their fleet was smaller, weaker. Their ships were not built for war, yet there was an undeniable energy in their resolve. They had come not to merely participate in the war, but to change its course. As the human fleet entered the combat zone, their ships scattered and broke formation, something entirely unexpected from the typically regimented forces of galactic armies. Human pilots, unfamiliar with the full scope of the war, quickly adapted their methods. They didn't follow standard protocols, didn't stick to the strategies that had become commonplace. Instead, they used every ounce of their limited training to exploit the smallest of openings, pushing their ships to the edge of their limits. They engaged the Zorathians with a mixture of cunning and audacity, unpredictable tactics that caught the enemy off guard. The Zorathian commanders, accustomed to overwhelming force and rigid strategies, were initially amused by the human fleet's apparent disarray. They assumed that the humans, with their poorly armed vessels, would be easily swept aside. But as the battle raged on, something shifted in the air. Human ships darted and weaved through the chaos like insects swarming a predator, striking at weak points in the Zorathian fleet's defenses and then vanishing before the enemy could react. Zorathian firepower was precise, but it was also linear, focused, and systematic. Unpredictability was something their tactics could not handle. For every shot the Zorathians fired, there was a human ship that evaded it with surprising agility, slipping into places they hadn't expected. Zorathian vessels, used to battling with overwhelming firepower and massive fleets, began to realize they were being outmaneuvered by something new. It wasn't superior technology. It wasn't superior firepower. It was something far more intangible. The human pilots fought not just to win, but to survive. And in their fight for survival, they began to adapt faster than their enemies, learning in real time from every mistake, every near miss, and every encounter. The human fleet suffered losses, but they kept pushing forward. The Zorathians watched in disbelief as their supposed victory began to slip away, bit by bit. A human cruiser, crippled and burning, was abandoned by its crew only to have its engineers remotely take control and pilot it into the heart of a Zorathian formation, causing a massive disruption in their ranks. Another human vessel, severely damaged, launched an ambush that left the Zorathians second-guessing every movement. These human tactics, seemingly reckless and impulsive, were proving effective. In the heat of battle, a human commander stood in front of a holographic map, fingers flying over a console, analyzing live data as though each moment held the key to survival. "We don't need to outgun them," the commander muttered under his breath. "We need to outthink them." Every human strategist, every officer and crew member, began to understand that this was not a war of superior firepower, but of wills. By the end of the day, the human fleet, battered but unbroken, had made its mark. The battle had ended in a surprising stalemate. No one had expected the humans to hold their own for even a fraction of the time they had. But they had done more than survive. They had forced the Zorathians to reassess their tactics, to rethink everything they thought they knew about war. Humanity had not just entered the war. They had thrown the first stone in a battle for the future of the galaxy. And for the first time in years, the galaxy began to wonder if the tide of war had truly turned. The Zorathians were bewildered. At first, they had dismissed humanity's chaotic style as a fluke, mere luck or desperation. But after the third consecutive engagement, it was clear this was no accident. Human forces had a unique approach to warfare, something that their enemies could neither predict nor counter. It was unlike anything the Zorathians had ever encountered, and it was beginning to eat away at the once immovable confidence of their commanders. Zorathian commanders prided themselves on precision, technology, and overwhelming force. Every ship was a calculated machine, built for efficiency and superior firepower. Their soldiers were trained to follow orders with unwavering discipline, to exploit weaknesses in enemy formations with flawless execution. For centuries, this method had made them the undisputed rulers of the galaxy. But the humans had thrown all of that into question. Humanity didn't rely on rigid plans or predictable movements. Their tactics were fluid, dynamic, and born from a deep-seated drive to win at any cost. Humans had an uncanny ability to adapt quickly to changing situations, to think on their feet, and to turn the tide of battle with nothing more than creative, unconventional thinking. They didn't have the most powerful ships or the most advanced technology, but they had something the Zorathians couldn't replicate: imagination. In the next engagement, the Zorathians faced a human fleet that seemed to have no coherent battle plan. The humans scattered in all directions, not in tight formations like the alien forces, but moving erratically, almost as if they were trying to confuse their enemies. Zorathian ships attempted to lock onto targets, but the human ships would suddenly break off and change course without warning. They seemed to be everywhere at once, striking from unexpected angles and exploiting the smallest openings. The Zorathians, used to calculating every move, found themselves second-guessing their every decision. The Zorathian dreadnought, equipped with devastating weaponry, loomed over the battlefield, its massive form a symbol of their superiority. It fired with precision, devastating the human ships within its range. But then a human vessel, appearing almost out of nowhere, launched a surprise attack from behind, targeting the dreadnought's weak spots. Gaps in its armor, blind spots in its defense systems. It was an unconventional tactic that caught the Zorathians off guard. In a matter of minutes, the once feared warship was crippled, its weapons disabled, and its crew scrambling to regain control. The human ship, heavily damaged, escaped before the Zorathians could retaliate. The Zorathians were furious, but even more than that, they were confused. How were the humans able to strike so effectively, despite their lack of advanced technology? How could they outmaneuver fleets that were designed for total dominance? The answers were not found in the human ships or weapons. The answer, they realized too late, was in the way humans thought. Human commanders refused to follow conventional wisdom. While the Zorathians would always predict a battle based on existing data, the humans acted in ways that were almost illogical, but somehow effective. They would sacrifice one ship to save many, misdirect fire to open new routes, and bait enemy forces into traps that seemed too obvious to be real. They used everything at their disposal: the environment, their ship's versatility, even the chaotic nature of the battle itself. The Zorathian military quickly initiated a special task force to study human tactics in depth. They sent their best minds to analyze recorded human engagements, trying to crack the code. What they found was a baffling collection of counter-strategies, none of which seemed to follow the same logic. The more they tried to understand, the more elusive the answers became. The humans' greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their unpredictability, their refusal to be boxed into a standard playbook. It was this that had given them the upper hand time and time again. Meanwhile, the humans had no intention of stopping. They kept pushing forward, forcing their enemies to evolve or perish. The Zorathian war machine, once so precise and coordinated, began to break down under the pressure of this new, unpredictable force. It wasn't just about firepower anymore. It was about the will to fight, the creativity to adapt, and the courage to defy expectations. And humanity, with every battle, was proving they had all three in abundance. As the weeks passed, the Zorathians grew more frustrated, and the coalition of alien races began to see a flicker of hope. Humanity had not only joined the war, they had begun to rewrite the rules of combat itself. The first cracks in the Zorathian Empire's dominance began to show. The war that had once seemed destined for the Zorathians to win was now tilting in an entirely unexpected direction. Humanity's unconventional tactics had disrupted the enemy in ways no one had anticipated, and the shift in momentum was palpable. Alien forces, once demoralized by their repeated failures, found themselves reinvigorated, as humanity proved that even in the face of overwhelming odds, there was always hope. The Zorathians, with their technological supremacy, had once considered the alien coalition's forces as little more than cannon fodder, to be mopped up before the final push to total victory. But now, their perfect systems and strategies were being shattered, and their commanders began to feel the weight of uncertainty creeping into their decisions. Human ingenuity had punctured the Zorathian myth of invincibility, and with each victory, the Empire's grip on the galaxy loosened. In one pivotal battle, humanity led a joint assault on a Zorathian stronghold located near the heart of their empire. The Zorathians had thought the base impenetrable, surrounded by defenses so sophisticated that any strike against it would have been suicidal. The alien coalition's fleets had already suffered several crushing defeats trying to break the stronghold's outer defenses. But humanity, once again, saw an opening no one else could. It wasn't about power, it was about precision and timing. The human fleet broke through the outer defenses by coordinating a series of synchronized hit-and-run strikes. As they attacked, they intentionally drew the Zorathian defenses into a trap, using misinformation, feints, and seemingly reckless maneuvers to deceive the enemy. It was a strategy based not on brute force but on sheer audacity. The Zorathians, confident in their technological superiority, were caught off guard. For the first time, they were playing catch-up, forced to defend against an enemy they could no longer predict. Human commanders, skilled in thinking on their feet and adapting to rapidly changing conditions, provided the crucial advantage. They worked in concert with the remaining alien forces, showing them how to blend their strengths with human unpredictability. The combined alien coalition, though battered, had rediscovered their courage as they witnessed the human fleet cutting through the heart of Zorathian lines. Together, they launched a final push that overwhelmed the remaining Zorathian forces on the planet's surface. The battle wasn't a complete victory. Zorathian reinforcements arrived, forcing the humans and their allies to fall back. But the damage was significant. Zorathian losses were catastrophic, and the once formidable fortress had been reduced to smoldering ruins. The human-led strategy had created a breach that was now too large for the Zorathians to ignore. Their empire's inner defenses were weakened, and cracks were forming in the facade of invulnerability they had so carefully cultivated. The impact of the battle reverberated throughout the galaxy. News of humanity's success spread like wildfire, carried on the lips of the alien coalition's warriors and soldiers. Hope that had long been extinguished now flickered anew. The Zorathians, once certain of their inevitable victory, began to see the reality of their situation. They were no longer the unchallenged masters of the galaxy. The tide of war was shifting. But even as the Zorathians retreated, regrouping to plan their next offensive, they could no longer ignore the threat that humanity posed. The human fleet, though still small compared to the vastness of the galaxy, was proving that they could not only disrupt the Zorathian war machine, they could destroy it if given enough time. Their victories had given the galaxy something it hadn't had in years: hope. And with that hope came the determination to fight on. Humanity, once considered an insignificant species, had made its mark on the war. It wasn't just about the battles they fought or the victories they claimed. It was about the change they had wrought in the hearts of those who had been oppressed for so long. The galaxy was no longer a place of certain doom. It was a place where the unexpected could happen. And humanity had shown everyone, including the Zorathians, that the impossible was possible. Frustration turned to desperation in the heart of the Zorathian Empire. Their once impenetrable strategies were crumbling, undermined by humanity's unpredictable tactics. The Zorathians had faced resistance before, but nothing like this. A species with no overwhelming fleet, no technological edge, yet possessing a remarkable ability to turn the battlefield itself into a weapon. The Empire's high command convened in urgent meetings, their every word laced with growing panic. They had underestimated humanity, and now it was threatening to undo everything they had built. In response, the Zorathians brought forth their most terrifying weapon, something that had been in development for decades, a doomsday device so powerful it could wipe entire planets from existence with a single strike. The weapon, known as the Apocalypse Array, was hidden within a massive, heavily guarded orbital station, deep within Zorathian space. Its technology was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. It could tear apart any planetary system, instantly reducing it to cosmic dust. The Zorathians believed that if they unleashed the Apocalypse Array, they could break the resolve of the human-led coalition, ending the war in one decisive, catastrophic blow. The Zorathian fleet began its final, desperate march toward the weapon's launch coordinates, preparing for a display of power that would ensure humanity's submission. The galaxy held its breath as the Zorathians' massive dreadnoughts, carriers, and warships converged on the station, poised to make the galaxy feel the full wrath of their might. But humanity had something the Zorathians didn't: a deep sense of purpose, a drive that went beyond mere survival. When the Coalition's intelligence network caught wind of the Zorathian plan, Human commanders reacted swiftly, crafting a bold counter-operation to infiltrate the Apocalypse Array. This was a mission that could change everything, but it came at a steep price. If it failed, the galaxy would be doomed. The humans knew the odds were almost impossible, but they had proven time and again that they could do the unthinkable. A small, specially trained team of human operatives was selected for the most dangerous mission imaginable: infiltrate the heart of the Zorathian fortress, bypass its impenetrable security, and destroy the weapon before it could be used. The team was composed of some of the finest soldiers from across Earth, experts in sabotage, stealth, and evasion. They would face overwhelming odds, but they had one advantage: their enemies would never expect them to succeed. The operation began under the cover of darkness, with human forces engaging Zorathian patrols to create distractions while the infiltration team silently made their way toward the orbital station. Every move was calculated, every decision made with the lives of millions at stake. The team faced near-impossible obstacles: anti-intrusion systems, unyielding Zorathian guards, and a ticking clock. Yet they pressed on, utilizing everything they had learned from years of combat against a superior foe. They used their surroundings, adapted to unexpected changes, and exploited weaknesses the Zorathians had never considered. The final hurdle was the most difficult: the main control room of the Apocalypse Array, guarded by Zorathian elite forces. The team fought with everything they had, pushing through wave after wave of Zorathian soldiers, each more ruthless than the last. In a tense, high-stakes battle, they reached the heart of the weapon and set the charges. But as they prepared to trigger the explosion, disaster struck. One of the team members was critically injured, and the countdown to the weapon's activation had already begun. Time was running out, and failure was not an option. With seconds to spare, the last of the charges were set, and the team managed to destroy the Apocalypse Array just as the weapon was about to fire. The station exploded in a massive blast, sending shockwaves through the surrounding system. The Zorathian fleet, now leaderless and without their ultimate weapon, was thrown into disarray. The human-led coalition had struck the Zorathians at their heart, and the galaxy watched in awe as the once mighty empire staggered back. The humans had done the impossible. They had dismantled the Apocalypse Array and crippled the Zorathian war effort in a single audacious move. It was a blow the Zorathians would not recover from, and for the first time in the war, it seemed like victory was within reach. The reckoning had come, and humanity had delivered the final judgment. The Zorathians had underestimated their enemy, and now they would pay the price for it. The stage was set for the final push, and the galaxy, once resigned to its fate, began to see the light of hope once again. The destruction of the Apocalypse Array was more than just a tactical victory. It was a turning point in the war. The Zorathians, now without their ultimate weapon and faced with mounting losses, were forced to retreat and regroup. The galaxy, once gripped by despair, now found a renewed sense of hope. Humanity, against all odds, had turned the tide of the war, and the question on everyone's mind was no longer whether they could win, but how soon. The human-led coalition knew the time had come for a final, all-out offensive. The Zorathians were weakened, their once unstoppable fleet scattered and disorganized. With the Apocalypse Array destroyed, their strategic position was in tatters, and the Empire's leadership was desperate to salvage whatever remained of their crumbling power. But for the first time in years, it was the Zorathians who were now playing defense. Humanity, with its unyielding resolve, was determined to strike the final blow. The coalition fleet, bolstered by humanity's ingenuity and resolve, assembled in a coordinated strike, their objective clear: break the Zorathian stronghold and end the war once and for all. The humans, with their flexible strategies and relentless drive, led the charge, taking the initiative in a way that had never been seen before. The alien forces, once hesitant and demoralized, followed their lead, emboldened by the belief that victory was possible. The Zorathians, who had once considered themselves the unquestioned rulers of the galaxy, were now scrambling to defend their remaining territory. The final offensive began with a massive wave of human fighters and warships, moving swiftly across the battlefield like a storm. They were outnumbered, yes, but their unpredictability and relentless will to fight made them formidable opponents. Human tactics were fluid, constantly shifting and evolving with every passing moment. Zorathian commanders, who had relied on their overwhelming firepower and strict discipline, found themselves in uncharted waters. Their ships, designed for predictability and calculated strategies, were caught off guard by the human fleet's ability to adapt, to think and act in ways the Zorathians could not anticipate. The battle raged across space, a whirlwind of explosions, flashing energy beams, and twisting, unpredictable maneuvers. The Zorathian warships, though powerful, were not built for the chaos that humanity brought to the field. Their precise formations faltered as human ships darted in and out of their lines, creating confusion and disorder. The Zorathians tried to regroup, but the human fleet wouldn't let them. The humans attacked from every direction, using decoys and feints, drawing the Zorathians into traps and striking at their most vulnerable points. Each attack, each victory, only served to heighten the sense of urgency on the Zorathian side. In the midst of the battle, the human leadership issued a daring command: a direct assault on the Zorathian command ship, a vessel of unparalleled power and significance. The goal was not just to destroy the ship, but to cripple the very heart of the Zorathian war effort. The human fleet, already pushing the limits of their endurance, launched a concentrated strike, sending everything they had towards the command ship. The Zorathian flagship was massive, its weapons and defenses formidable, but it was not invincible. Human engineers, utilizing their unparalleled ability to improvise, had developed a series of experimental weaponry specifically designed to exploit weaknesses in the Zorathians' sophisticated technology. With a combination of precision strikes and ingenious tactics, the human fleet created an opening in the Zorathian defenses, allowing a small team of elite soldiers to board the flagship and disable its central control systems. The Zorathian command ship, now crippled, began to spiral out of control, its once proud crew scrambling to regain control. The human forces did not relent. With the flagship in disarray, the remainder of the Zorathian fleet was scattered and disorganized, leaving them vulnerable to the finishing blow. The final assault was swift. The Zorathian fleet, now in chaos, had no hope of recovery. In a matter of hours, the tide of the battle had completely shifted. The once mighty Zorathian Empire, brought to its knees by the audacity and ingenuity of humanity, was defeated. The remaining Zorathian forces, broken and leaderless, were forced to surrender, unable to continue the fight. The war, which had seemed so certain in its outcome, had ended in a way no one could have predicted. Humanity, against all odds, had not only survived, they had emerged as the victors. The Zorathian Empire was shattered, and the galaxy, once on the brink of annihilation, was finally free. For humanity, the victory was both a triumph and a reminder of the sacrifices that had been made. The cost had been high, but the galaxy had been saved. The final offensive had been the culmination of everything humanity had learned over the course of the war: their ability to adapt, to fight when all seemed lost, and to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The tide had shifted, and the future now lay in their hands. The war was over, but the victory came at a price. As the last remnants of the Zorathian Empire crumbled, the once great space stations and battlefields fell silent. The echoes of countless battles now replaced by an uneasy stillness. The stars that had once seemed distant and unshakable now felt closer, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath in the aftermath of a great upheaval. Humanity had done the impossible, faced overwhelming odds, defied expectations, and defeated an empire that had thought itself untouchable. But now, the true challenge awaited. The galaxy was not a place of peace, not yet. It was a shattered, fragmented collection of worlds that had been ravaged by the war. The Zorathian destruction had left entire sectors lifeless, Their once thriving civilizations turned to ash. The alien races that had allied with humanity were scattered, their peoples wounded, their planets scared by the endless battle. And in the wake of the war's end, there was no clear leader, no one to guide the galaxy toward healing. The victory was bittersweet, for humanity had become not just the victors, but the new focal point of a broken universe. Humanity's rise from a species on the edge of extinction to the vanguard of galactic civilization was unprecedented. The coalition had been united by one common enemy, but now that the Zorethians were no more, the question arose, what would become of the galaxy? The alien races, who had fought alongside humans, were left with uncertainty, their past allegiances strained by the complexity of the new world. Some began to wonder if they should turn on their human allies now that the war was over. Others, awed by humanity's strength and determination, looked to Earth with a new sense of reverence. Humanity's leaders, weary from the war but resolute in their purpose, knew that the responsibility of rebuilding fell upon their shoulders. They had become the symbol of hope, but they also carried the weight of the galaxy's survival. At the United Earth Coalition's command center, representatives from every race convened. The war had united them, but what would keep them united now? A new council was formed, a temporary galactic assembly where the leaders of humanity and the alien races would collaborate to restore order and rebuild. For the first time in history, representatives from dozens of worlds sat side by side, attempting to forge a new path forward. It was a fragile peace, one that could easily break apart under the pressure of old grudges and old wounds. Trust had been built on the battlefield, but now it had to be nurtured in council halls. Humanity's diplomatic corps, many of whom had never imagined themselves in such a role, suddenly found themselves tasked with keeping this new order together. Meanwhile, Earth itself had changed forever. The war had not just been fought in space, it had touched every corner of the planet. Advances in technology, driven by the need to survive, were now being repurposed for rebuilding. Cities that had once been devastated by the horrors of war began to rise again. But Earth's role had shifted from a struggling planet to the foundation of a new galactic order. The human spirit, forged in the fires of war, now sought to spread its vision of cooperation and prosperity to the stars. Humanity had always been a species capable of great feats, but the war had shown them just how far they could go when united. The same ingenuity that had brought them to the brink of survival now drove them to rebuild a galaxy that had been torn apart. It wasn't just about the victory, it was about what came after. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive, but how they would shape the future of the galaxy. As the first steps toward rebuilding began, there was still much to be done. The Zorethian holdouts, remnants of the once mighty empire, still posed a threat, lurking in the darker corners of the galaxy. Some races within the coalition were skeptical of humanity's newfound influence, questioning whether they could be trusted with the future of the galaxy. But the humans, having already proven their ability to adapt and overcome, pressed forward, knowing that their most important task lay ahead, not just rebuilding the galaxy, but uniting it under a banner of peace, collaboration, and hope. Humanity had shown that, even in the darkest of times, it was capable of rewriting the future. But the true challenge, the one that would define their place in the galaxy, was just beginning. The war had ended, but the journey had only started. The stars were now within their reach, but humanity would have to decide what kind of galaxy it would help create. Would it be one of unity, peace, and cooperation? Or would it fracture into further division and strife? The answer would lie in the choices made in the years to come. Humanity had risen to greatness. Now it would have to prove it could lead. The years following the war's end passed with a speed that both comforted and unnerved the galaxy. Humanity, with its relentless determination, had taken the first steps in rebuilding a shattered universe. Cities on Earth were reborn, and the scars of the war, though still visible, began to fade. It was a time of transition, a time of hope, but also uncertainty. The galaxy had never seen a power rise as rapidly as humanity had, And with that power came both admiration and fear. The new Galactic Council, a coalition of all the races that had once fought under humanity's banner, began to take shape. It was a fragile system, held together by the mutual respect gained on the battlefield and the shared desire for peace. But old wounds were not so easily forgotten. The memory of the war lingered in the hearts of many, and suspicion simmered beneath the surface. Humanity's allies, now uneasy in their newfound role in the galaxy, questioned whether Earth could truly be trusted to lead. The war had brought them together, but peace would require more than just military victory. It would require trust, compromise, and the willingness to build something lasting, something beyond survival. Humanity, for all its victories, was aware of the stakes. The galaxy had been forged in the fires of war, and it could just as easily be undone by the flames of division. Earth's leaders worked tirelessly in the Council, balancing the interests of the different races while slowly, carefully, fostering the unity that had eluded the galaxy for so long. Diplomatic efforts, once seen as a secondary concern, became as important as the military strategy that had brought the coalition its victory. Humanity had learned that power could not be wielded in a vacuum. True leadership required listening, understanding, and empathy. The battles had been fought and won, but the most important fight, the one for peace, was just beginning. In the core worlds, once devastated by Zorethian aggression, reconstruction was well underway. The human engineers and architects, who had built some of the most resilient and adaptable technologies during the war, now turned their efforts to healing the scars of the galaxy. They worked hand in hand with their alien counterparts, building new cities and terraforming worlds ravaged by conflict. The intergalactic trade routes, once so perilous, were reopened, and a new era of economic exchange began. For the first time in a long while, the stars felt full of potential. Yet, as the galaxy began to heal, darker forces began to stir. Not all races were content with peace. The remnants of the Zorethian Empire, though broken and leaderless, still held sway over parts of the galaxy. Rebel factions, embittered by the fall of their empire, organized in the shadows, their ambitions fueled by a deep-seated resentment of humanity's rise to power. These factions, while small, were dangerous. They were the echoes of the old galaxy, one driven by might and conquest, a galaxy that humanity had fought to free from oppression. For humanity, this was the final test, the test of leadership. The galaxy was a fragile thing, its future hanging in the balance. Earth's leaders knew that, just as the war had shown the galaxy the strength of humanity's resolve, this new era would show the galaxy what kind of civilization humanity would become. Would they rule with the iron fist of empire, or would they lead with the wisdom of unity, the vision of a shared future? Humanity's legacy, the thing that would define them in the years to come, was not just the victory they had won in battle. It was the way they chose to wield their newfound influence, the way they worked not to dominate, but to unite, the way they listened to the voices of the many rather than the few. They had fought for freedom, and now they would fight for peace, not through weapons or dominance, but through diplomacy, understanding, and a shared desire for something better. The galaxy, once poised on the brink of annihilation, was reborn, not in the image of one race or one species, but in the image of something greater. Humanity had not only defeated the Zorethians, they had shown the galaxy that it was possible to forge a future together. And in that future, the legacy of humanity would be one of hope, leadership, and the unwavering belief that no matter the odds, a new dawn was always possible. As the years passed, humanity's role as the cornerstone of this new galaxy solidified. Their legacy, born from their triumph in battle, grew into a force for peace and cooperation. The galaxy was no longer a battleground for power. It was a place where every race, every species, had a stake in the future. Humanity had shown the way, and the galaxy followed.